Before we jump into this week's episode of Major Pain, I will remind you that I am not a medical professional. Please do not take any medical action based off what you hear on this podcast without first consulting your doctor.
Medicine itself is kind of nebulous.
My brain is just wired differently.
You're feeling symptoms that the tests aren't showing exist.
People need to hear your story.
Welcome to Major Pain. I'm your host, Jesse Mercury. I have a very exciting guest with me today. We're going to be talking with Tim Cummings, author of the Lightening People play, talking about not only the book, but the personal history that inspired this book and your brother's history with epilepsy. I'm so excited to talk to you because I've read this book. I loved it so much. Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Jesse, thank you so much. Thank you. It's really nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to chat with you. Let's get to know you a little bit before we jump into your book and your story. So, Tim, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
I was born in New York, in a place called Port Jefferson, which is out on Long Island. My family originally hails from Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, the Irish Italian of Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Brooklyn, the one with Saoirse Ronan. It's from about 10 years ago. That's a phenomenal film and a phenomenal book. But that story, when I saw that, that was me seeing my history, because that's the story of the Irish Italian coming together in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn in the 50s. And that was my parents.
Wow, cool.
So my dad was a New York City fireman, a lieutenant for over 30 years in the South Bronx. So it was pretty hardcore, youngest of 6 children. And yeah, I grew up, went to school there. When I was about 11 years old, I was asked by the music teacher to audition for the school play, which was not something I had ever heard of before. I was like, the what? And unbeknownst to me, I had all of this talent that had never been noticed or detected or tapped into. So I didn't know that I could sing. I didn't know I could act. I didn't know I could dance. I could do all these things in droves. My only passion before that, if I remember correctly, was reading. I read like a maniac. So this felt like a natural extension in a way. I just sort of always perceived being on stage as like the characters in the books that I loved coming to life.
Yeah. What sort of genre did you like to read?
When I was young, I read a lot of books for kids, right? I mean, I read all the Beverly Cleary books. I read all of the Choose Your Own Adventure books. I also dabbled into stuff that was not necessarily for kids, but kids were attracted to, like Little Women. Louisa May Alcott. I read that. I read Watership Down. I was obsessed with Watership Down. I was reading the Lord of the Rings books.
Yeah.
And I was reading these books by an author named Ruth Chu, who wrote several dozen books about these kids who lived in Brooklyn or the city, who would always have an encounter with a woman who turned out to be a witch and would bring them like through a portal to a dimension where there was like a coven of witches, and they would go on these extraordinary coming of age adventures. I loved those books. I always had a proclivity for like Halloween, scary movies, gothic sensibilities of life. So yeah, I was an avid reader. After I did this first play, that set me off on a journey as being a professional actor for over 40 years.
Wow.
And it's been a little bit on the back burner, I will say, because I've been focused on publishing books now. I went back and got my master's in writing. And that's where you find me now.
Yeah, this is so interesting for me, having read your book. I'm already seeing where this came from, I can imagine that your experience in theater as a kid, that's what this book is about. Give us the short version, the pitch. What is the Lightning People play about?
Okay, so the Lightning People play is a story of these amazing theater kids who put up a play to raise money for a seizure-alert dog, because the protagonist's younger brother has been diagnosed with epilepsy, and their play opens a portal.
There's elements of fantasy in it, and I kind of love how you don't really know for sure throughout most of the book. Are they actually opening a portal, or is something happening in this one character's mind, like the magic of theater coming to life, or is it actually real magic that's being conjured by this play that these people are putting on. And it's all around this experience with the main character's brother having epilepsy, which I understand is also from your life. Your brother inspired that.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that, growing up with your brother with epilepsy and how that impacted you.
It was chaos, unfortunately. He had a lot of grand mal seizures or tonic-clonic seizures. So he would have convulsions and, the whole thing it's described in the book. There are some pretty visceral scenes describing it. But, I shared a room with him growing up, and he would have these seizures usually in the middle of the night, and they were very scary. And I was a kid, so I was just trying to deal with it the best way that I could. But the way that it was handled in my family was sort of very, I don't know, pragmatic, I don't know, working class. My mom and dad would be like, just deal with it. Just figure it out. It's what we have to deal with. So if he has a seizure in the middle of the night, take care of him. Just figure it out. And I never felt, not until later in my life, especially after we lost him, I never felt like I could have an understanding of the experience of what it was like living with that epilepsy. For instance, and this is how it applies to the book, there were nights where he would be seizing and I would be stuck in bed, frozen with fear, because it's so scary. And I always felt like there was, I don't know, something in the room. I don't know, a presence, a doorway, a portal, something hovering. Epilepsy is very mysterious that way. And in this book, I think a lot of stuff kind of dropped out of my subconscious when I was writing it. Stuff that was buried in there, stuff that I never explored, stuff I never really talked about. I think that's where the symbols came from. I think that's where the Lightning People came from. Just stuff that dropped out. And the reason it's ambiguous is because I don't really know what it is. It very well may be stuff that really happened because of his epilepsy and because of some of the mysticism that surrounds epileptics, especially in olden times.
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with that. This is something I've never heard people talk about before. What is the sort of mysticism surrounding epilepsy?
I mean, a lot of native tribes used to think that epileptics were messengers from the gods, either delivering messages from the spirit world or acting as gateways to other portals, or that they were guardians stopping evil spirits from coming through.
Wow.
Because back then they didn't know what it was, and they didn't have medications for it or treatments for it. So they were thought of as these sort of shamans in a way.
Wow, fascinating.
It's really fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I'm just seeing all these pieces that created this really fascinating story. I will say also, first of all, thank you for sending me the book. This is the first physical book that anyone's ever sent me. I've gotten some e-reader books before, and every time I've interviewed an author, for some reason I always get the books after the interview. This is the first time I've gotten a book beforehand where I could actually read it and be able to converse with you about it. Obviously, we don't want to get into spoilers, but it's really well written. Like the actual prose was really great. And
thank you.
It's a very evocative book, and there's so much truth in it, which I really, talking to you now, I'm seeing where all this truth is coming from. It's your personal history. But I did theater as a kid. I have a chronic illness. Yeah. So, so there's a lot of things in here that I really related to. This personal journey that these two boys go on, really the main character, Kirby, we see the world through his eyes, and his brother Baxter, who has these seizures. And I've never really read anything that had this sort of, actual realistic version of somebody watching someone go through seizures from the outside and having to care for them and not knowing what to do. And it's really very striking. And it's just because it's real. It's, they always say, write what you know. And this is what this history with your brother that creates sort of the backbone of the story. And it's really quite beautiful.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. That really makes me feel seen. It really feels to me like the book itself is being seen. It took me a very long time to figure out how to reconcile this in my life. I've been really angry for decades since we lost him. It was horrible that he had it. It was horrible how we lost him. Life just, and you might know this just from having a chronic illness, life just keeps barreling on. Nobody stops for anything. And I just had to keep going. I was fresh out of college and I was just starting my life. And we lost him, and I've been really angry about it and really confused about it. And all of these years that I've been living with it and dealing with it, I've never come across a story where I felt seen, or where I felt that other people who might be dealing with it felt seen. I don't know any stories in the zeitgeist that explore epilepsy. No movies, no TV shows, nothing. And it's also, in my opinion, not well studied and not well understood. So this was an opportunity for me to sit down and say, what is this? How do I want to share my experience? And it took me a long time to figure it out. The framework of theater was the first thing that I laid on top of it, because I thought, how am I gonna tell a story about epilepsy? Like, I don't want to write about my life. I want to fictionalize, because then I can play with magical realism. Right? And laying the framework of theater down on it made perfect sense, because I thought, I can write about it through the lens of theater because I know a lot about theater. I know about the magic of theater. I know how theater builds community. I know how theater is very healing. I know how theater is a place for the misfits. I know how theater teaches empathy. I know so many amazing things about theater and how important it is in the world, and how I wanted that explored as well. What took me a while to figure out was, how do I bridge these two things? And then the dog showed up, and I was like, that's it. And I say this to my writing students: if you have a problem with your storytelling, put an animal in it. You will have no problem.
I've never heard that. I love that. Yeah. It really does link these things together, because Kirby is writing a play to put on a play to raise money for a service dog for his little brother, Baxter. Were you the older brother?
Younger.
You're younger. Okay. And what was your brother's name?
Matthew.
Yeah. So you were in college, or just out of college, you said, when Matthew passed?
Yeah.
And how old was he?
He was 26. I was 24.
Okay. So, and you had grown up together, sharing a bedroom together.
Yeah.
How old was Matthew when he started having seizures?
I mean, as far as I remember from being very young. So the onset of it came when he was very young, maybe 3 or 4.
Wow.
Because I remember it from my earliest memories.
Yeah. I mean, if you're 2 years old, I don't remember anything till I was 4 years old. So this was just always present since you can remember. What are your earliest memories of coming to understand that your brother had a health condition and there was something different about him than the other kids your age?
I remember my mom being really upset. She used to have to go to the neurologist, and I know there was always, I didn't know what this was at first, but there was always the talk of CAT scan, giant, scary, horrifying machine that he had to go inside of so they could take x-rays of his brain. So I knew that it had something to do with his brain. I knew that his brain was abnormal. And I knew that as a result of his epilepsy, he was also developing much slower than most other children. So in addition to his epilepsy, he had a learning disability. And what I suspect now in the future was that he was dealing with some autism or Asperger's-y things as well. Just based on what I see now of kids his age who have Asperger's, I think that's so interesting, because that's Matt as well. So a lot of neurodivergence there, which I also put into the book with other characters.
Yeah. What was your relationship like with Matthew?
Mercurial and very prismatic. So on the one hand, we were brothers, and he, like me, had a sense of adventure. We're Gen X, so it was like we'd go out of the house at 6 o'clock in the morning and not come in until midnight. That whole Gen X thing of like, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Remember those commercials?
I do. Yeah.
We had a very adventurous time together. There were a lot of kids in our neighborhood. There was a lot of children. So lots of kids going out and playing and doing things that kids do. But he was also felled by his disability, There were a lot of things we had to be careful about, and a lot of things that would happen in the opening, the haunted ride in the carnival where he has a seizure.
Yeah.
That's from real life.
Wow.
That freaked me out so much when that happened. So there was a sense of just childhood, sibling adventure, and growing up in a big family, but also a lot of frustration on my part because he required a lot of attention. And he was the cause for a lot of chaos. And it caused me to become very independent and to not rock the boat and to just go to school and work hard and sort of, it's not that I felt invisible or anything like that, but I certainly flew under the radar because he required a lot of attention. And I just remember the medication he had to take. There was like 15 or 16 pill bottles on the kitchen counter at all times. And he would have to take this medicine, and there was always crazy side effects from it. So it affected how he slept. It affected how he ate. It affected whether or not he was constipated. Some of it affected his mental acuity. He couldn't go to a normal school. He was always in classes for kids who were slower or developmentally challenged. So there was a lot of frustration around it as well. And I think when I did start doing theater, I found an outlet to express some of it through inhabiting other people and understanding other people's emotional worlds and being able to sidle into that very seamlessly.
Yeah, this is so interesting. It's a really good example of the ways in which chronic illness spiders out from the individual experiencing it to their family, to their community. And it's something I've spent a lot of time thinking about because, my health is very stable right now, but I went through many years where it was the absolute opposite of that. And I required so much attention and so much care. And I felt so much guilt about that. It's a really complicated feeling because it's like, I need these things and I need to ask for this help and I need this wheelchair and I need these pills and I need this amount of sleep and I need this certain type of food. And if I don't get it, my body sort of explodes and I lose control. I didn't have epilepsy. I have small fiber neuropathy and mast cell activation syndrome, and it was undiagnosed. So it led to some pretty severe symptoms that the world around me had to deal with. And, when I first got together with my partner, we just got married this last year. When we first got together, I was doing okay, but I kind of went downhill from there and got to my worst point during the course of our dating. And she really had to accommodate me all the time.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating for her. And that's hard for her.
Yeah.
And then there's also the feeling of like, well, I'm not the one living with the illness, so I can't complain, Yeah. But she needs to complain because you have to vent these things. And it's so important on both sides to have open communication and to have an outlet to process all the emotions. And it's okay to be frustrated by someone else's illness. It's natural. It's normal. And for you, it's so interesting, like, growing up with that, from such a young age. There's no way that a 5 or 6 year old can process being frustrated by your brother's epilepsy. You're just going to be frustrated. Like, how do you process that? There's no way. You're too young. You don't have the faculties built yet to do that. Mm-hmm. So how did that shift for you and change as you got older? from your teens into your 20s, did your relationship with your brother's epilepsy change over time?
Yeah, I mean, in this weird kind of way, the dynamics of the family saga just felt normal in a way.
Hmm.
I grew up in a very Catholic household, and so there was this whole thing about, this was meant to be, and this is God's will, and if you just pray, and the whole sort of thoughts and prayers mentality, none of which I ever bought into because unfortunately, I was a really bullied kid. I was really badly bullied for being gay. I mean, back then I didn't know that I was gay. I didn't know what was going on, but I was different. And I used to gravitate away from boys. I used to want to either be by myself or hang out with girls. So I was also dealing with this whole thing of being really badly bullied and assaulted and beat up. And
I'm so sorry.
And inside the whole religion thing, I mean, we used to have to go to religious classes, right? And the nuns and the priests would talk about how we're supposed to treat one another while they were literally watching me be assaulted by boys.
Wow. Ugh.
So
horrible.
that actually helped me to say, well, this is not for me, and I don't have to believe in any of this. But I did find ways to navigate it once I got into theater and started to meet other people who may have been a little bit different, who were expressive, who were creative, who may have had their own issues at home, that being in the theater was helping them to manage and heal, like find some path toward healing. It was like the woods appeared. Okay, the woods, here's this mess, here's this chaos. And then a little path appeared. Okay, there's a path in there, I see it. And then you would have to go in and kind of make your way through it. Sadly, right around the time that I started to find ways to cope with Matthew's epilepsy, our mother passed away. She had cancer and she died. And unfortunately, she was kind of the glue in the family and also Matt's main caretaker. And when she passed away, things got very, it's hard to think of a word to describe it, because I knew what I was feeling as somebody who did not have a disability and as somebody who was really intelligent and really expressive and really well-read and really loquacious, even at that age, at 15 years old. I knew the existential angst and despair I was feeling. I was worried about how Matt was dealing with it because it was setting off his seizures. Because being upset, being angry, being sick, big changes like that in the world can cause more seizures and worse seizures. So he started to have them even more. And I remember having really bad fights with my dad about this. My poor dad was not well suited to deal with all of this stuff. And I remember just trying to navigate this tricky terrain and relying primarily on my friends. I became kind of very goth at that time. So I was like really into that whole scene and, going to record stores and going to concerts in the city and really sort of living that lifestyle and then thinking about college. I remember being very worried leaving for college, going off to NYU, about leaving my brother behind, because the thing is, like, we didn't know what was going to happen with him. He didn't seem able to have a normal life. Like, what was he going to do? He didn't even finish school, right? He was in and out of all of these programs to try and figure out if he had any skills, if he had any life skills. So I would say that the relationship moved from feeling confused and frustrated to feeling really guilty. Really, really guilty about, being a quote unquote a survivor, having opportunities presented to me and going off into the world to go to university, right? It's like a survivor's guilt. Yeah,
interesting. And then he passes away. I can't imagine how awful that must have been.
Yeah, he was in Florida for a summer, staying with my eldest brother, just to give a break to my dad, because my dad had been his main caretaker. And when he was in Florida, he got, if I remember correctly, a lot of it is very fuzzy because it's so traumatic. But he got sick, and when he gets sick, he has really bad seizures, and he fell and broke his neck.
Oh my God.
And so he was paralyzed for a while, and he was living in a wheelchair and in and out of homes. And then he didn't make it. He ended up dying from it. And I remember at the time that there was this incredible sense of sadness and anger and relief, because it was so hard for us all to understand how he was going to live in the world and live any kind of a normal life. And it actually really breaks my heart when I see people who have suffered through things like that and found a way to manage it and live in the world normally and have a reasonably healthy and happy life. Because that's really what I wanted for him. And it didn't happen. Do you know that show Love on the Spectrum? Did you ever see that?
I just watched it. I just watched the American version on Netflix. We just binged it. I just absolutely loved it. I loved it.
I loved it so much. But I remember when we first started watching it, their personalities really reminded me a lot of my brother. And I was seeing people who reminded me of Matt, and it made me feel like, oh, this could have been him if he didn't die, and we all found a way for him to manage in the world in a healthy and happy way. It was really heartbreaking. I had to tell my husband, I was like, I'm so sorry. We can't watch this. It's too painful for me. Took me a little while to be able to just settle into it and be happy about the fact that there are people who are disabled and who are dealing with really difficult things who can live in the world. They can. Yeah. So I remember that affected me very, very deeply. When I see that in the world, I feel both really relieved and really heartbroken.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And yeah, I mean, this podcast, one of the main points of this podcast is that there is life and joy to be had living with chronic illness and disability.
Completely.
And that is, a representation that I hope to bring each and every episode. We can't interview your brother, we can't hear his story, and you can share his story, and it's really impactful. And not every story ends with someone finding a path towards joy and happiness, and that's a very difficult reality, and it's one that's important to face. What I love about this is that you made the good come out of it. You found the thing. Years after your brother died, you found the way to process his story into something that other people can experience, a form of representation that brings your brother back to life, that makes him immortal by being this character in this story, or at least inspiring this character in this story. And that story will live on. And that's something that I think is so awesome. And I always love when people translate their experiences with chronic illness and disability into art of any form. It's something that I have also done a little bit of myself. I've written some songs. I write sci-fi themed synth pop music. Ooh. And I wrote this song called Cold Dead World that's sort of about being inside of a body that's not working. Yeah. It's, I still have to record it and release it. I wrote it like a decade ago. And I've actually started writing myself. I'm writing a sci-fi story inspired by my chronic illness experience.
Ooh. Oh, that's amazing.
I'm actually making progress on it. I'm like 20,000 words in, 50 pages in, and I don't really know what I'm doing. So it's just like sort of an experiment and an experience of processing, because these wounds that happen from this sort of a health challenge are very deep and sort of impossible to see the totality of from the outside. And you kind of have to go internal and really dig to sort of figure out, what is the shape of this? How do I process this? Is there a way through this? Can I integrate this? Can I make it a part of me in a way that is positive and healthy? And it's just such a challenge. And, I never want people to listen to this podcast and think that we're sugarcoating anything or like,
Nope.
This is the positive, happy-go-lucky version of disability. Like, that's not it. It's the real version. It's everyone's real version, but everyone's real version is different. And then here's someone talking to you who you are related to, but not living with disability.
Yeah.
And your reality of that is so different. And your brother's reality is one that, again, he can't share himself. So yeah, there's a very different type of story for us to share here on the podcast, but it's really, really thought provoking. And I just want to thank you as we go for being so open and sharing this with us.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Again, I really appreciate you saying that and seeing it, seeing me, seeing this book, and you are a perfect example of what it is that I wanted to do with this character, with this book. I could have written a memoir, or I could have even fictionalized it and made it closer to what happened, in which case it would have been really dark.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make sure that the end of this book had a really positive message, especially relating to young people, young creative people, inviting magic into your life, whether real or an illusion, like it kind of is presented in this book, but giving Bax a life, a healthy, happy life. I mean, there's one scene, I don't know if you remember, in the book where Kirby talks about 15 years from now, when Hetty the dog passes away, no matter where I am in the world, I'm going to fly back and be with her. And what am I going to be doing then? And he goes on this whole tangent, and then he's like, wait, what is my brain doing right now? Why am I thinking about this? But that was my way of projecting into the future for Baxter, that he was going to be okay, that they got this seizure dog and it was going to help him, and he was going to go out into the world and have a really good life and do the kind of thing that you're doing, which is bringing conversation to it, meeting people where they are, discussing chronic illnesses, discussing people's grievances with it, people sharing their experiences with it, healing from it, feeling heard, feeling seen. That's the point of all of this. The point is to have a conversation and to be communicating about it. Otherwise, my brother's life wouldn't have mattered. And I don't accept that.
Yeah.
So much of life and the way memory works and the way trauma works is it wants to get rid of all of it. And I've been fighting against that for so long. I don't want to get rid of that. I can't necessarily think too much about it because it is painful. But then I feel like in writing this book, I found a way to transcend it. I mean, I feel differently already. I already feel a sense of lightness around it. And even though, Matt is not with us anymore, he kind of is in this book. And even though I'm not Kirby and Baxter is not Matt, there are elements of us both suffused into them. But a story has an amazing way of being immortal.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have to be honest. I feel in awe. I think about growing up with him and his epilepsy, and sometimes it doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem like, was that me? Was that really my life? And then I think, now I'm in awe that I actually wrote this story and got it out into the world. Like, I still can't believe it. Sometimes I'll just pick up the book and just go to a random page and be like, what? Like, I wrote this? Like, when did I do this? When was I writing this sentence? How was I doing this? And gosh, I really, really hope it gets to people for whom it can make a difference.
Yeah.
Honestly. Like, I'm so glad it made it to you.
Yeah.
And that was through my publicist.
Yeah.
Which is why you want to have people helping you with your stories, right?
Yes.
It's why you want to have publicists or a PR team or people who actually have the avenues to reach out to people in the world for whom it would be useful, who can amplify its voice.
Yeah, totally.
And it's that in and of itself is very much like the magic in the book. There's so much magic that happened in the real world in my life that mirrors stuff that happened in the book. It's crazy. Can I tell you a couple of stories?
Please.
Okay, so the whole Anne Bogart thing, Anne Bogart, who is the theater director, the famous theater director, she was the artistic director of the City Company, SITI, and taught the master's directing program at Columbia for decades. She's a legend. She's a legend and brilliant, and I love her book, A Director Prepares. I have loved that book because it's not just a book for directors. It's a book for actors. It's a book for artists. It's a book for living life. And I put that book into this book through their mentor, Krasinski, who gives the book to Kirby, who doesn't know how to direct. And Kirby's like, I'm not going to read this book. It's for adults. And Krasinski says, but interpret it the way you would in your little 14-year-old mind, little dude. So you get to see Kirby figuring out these massive, beautiful, epic ideas about theater through her book. So I talk a lot about the book. There are quotes from the book. When I got the book deal through Black Rose Writing, they were like, well, you can't use any of that. And I was like, oh, shit, that's right. Because you don't think about that when you're writing. It's like, oh my God, that's right. I'm not going to be able to use any of that. That's not mine. So they were like, okay, you can come up with a different name, a different book title, different quotes, just fictionalize it. But I was not content with that. I remember being like, no, I got to find a way through this. And, as someone who's been a thespian his whole life, I made some calls. I have a friend here in LA, Jessica Hanna, who's thanked in the book, who used to work with Anne Bogart. And I called her and I said, I know this is going to sound crazy. You've got to get a letter to her for me. I just want to present my case. So I wrote a letter to her and I said, I studied with students of yours at NYU. I've been a thespian my whole life. I wrote this book. It's about the magic of theater. It's about epilepsy, and it's that your book is in it. And I'm just wondering, can you put me in touch with your lawyers? Can we make a deal? I didn't hear anything for a really long time. And then I got an email from her saying, this is amazing. You are allowed to use whatever you want without owing me any royalties.
Wow.
Just right there. I was like, there it is. There's the magic. I
Cool.
made an effort. I reached out. And so now she becomes a part of this book. And I hope gets introduced to a younger generation of up and coming artists who are going to read this and go, who's Anne Bogart? What? Right? Incredible. Another thing that I did not have any awareness of, but makes perfect sense, is the obsession with the color purple. It is all through this book in droves. And when many months ago, when I got the first draft of the book cover, I was out to dinner with my writing friends and I showed it to them. And my friend Pete was like, is this book about epilepsy? And I was like, yeah, how did you know that? He's like, well, my wife's sister had epilepsy. I think may have passed from it as well. And he was like, purple is the color, the global epilepsy awareness color. And I was like, oh shit, are you kidding me? I did not know that.
Whoa.
I didn't even know that. And then I was like, that makes perfect sense. That's like the lightning people coming through and or something in my subconscious. Right. And then another amazing thing, the day that I wanted to introduce the book to the world, exactly 3 months from its release date, which was March 26th, Epilepsy Awareness Day. I'm like, what? And then March 27th was like National Theater Day. Like these coincidences are exactly like the magical things happening in the book, right? I say that they open a portal. It's not necessarily a portal like Jodie Foster goes through in Contact when she flies through a wormhole.
Yes.
It's more like a portal of things opening and stuff coming through. Right? A channel, a communication happening. So these are amazing stories to share about how the magic in the book is manifesting in real life. I feel like the book getting to you is another one.
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool. Something else I really, really loved about the book is the story that's happening on top of all of this of Kirby and Baxter's two dads who have separated before the book starts.
Yep.
And then there's also like these two boys dealing with their parents having this sort of marital strife. And it's really compelling and really amazing. And, seeing the different relationships between the boys and their two dads and just the way in which that is sort of like on top of all of the rest of this. I really, really love how you integrated that into the story.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for saying that. Representation and differentiation. Right?
Yeah. And it was a very cool version of representation that I'd never seen before. I love casual queerness in stories where it's like, this isn't a story about these two gay dads having kids. No, like that's sort of like the icing on the story. That's what's happening in the background of the story. And I've never seen a version of that with two dads before. And I just really, really appreciated that representation. Thought it was beautiful.
Thank you. Two of my best friends are lesbian moms, and me and my husband are godparents to their children. They're twins. So, they have same-sex parents. And the fellow who did the audiobook of the Lightning People play, whose name is Will Collier, he's also a gay dad. And I specifically made that happen. I said to the publisher, because I've known Will for years. He's a fellow actor here in Los Angeles, and he is brilliant. He's a brilliant actor, a beautiful and an award-winning audiobook narrator. And I said to the publisher, like, hire Will Collier. Please trust me. I know he's going to kill it. He's going to kill it. And he did. I listened to this audiobook in tears. Oh my God. I can't even tell you how brilliant it is. If you like audiobooks, please give it a listen. He just manifests it so beautifully. But getting back to the original point, yeah, they're gay parents whose lives are exactly the same as non-gay parents. I didn't need to make them amazing and faultless and live flawless lives, because God forbid I didn't. Then what am I saying about gay parents? Oh, you don't want to give the haters any excuse to, throw any more of their vitriol at you. But it was just a normal byproduct of normal life.
Yeah.
That their parents are going through something challenging, but it acts as another metaphor in their lives for representation and differentiation, two themes that course through this entire book.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love that. How long did it take you to write this book?
I started writing it do you know the author Francesca Lia Block?
No.
Oh, she's amazing. Look her up. She's probably most famous for a series of books called the Wheatsy Bat books. She was one of my mentors at Antioch, and she's the bomb. I started writing it at a writing workshop she was throwing at her house in Culver City in the late fall of 2019. And I was just bringing in pages, and we were all looking at them, and I was getting some feedback. Not quite sure what this would be, how it would be received. And then it was getting good feedback, so I kept at it. And then the pandemic happened. And I was at a loss, like everybody. I picked it up again early in 2021 when the world started to open up again a little bit. And I went on a few writers' retreats that year. And I did NaNoWriMo. You know what NaNoWriMo is?
No.
NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month. It happens every November. It's a whole subculture. You can look it up. They have a website. If you're writing, you may want to look into it. So the goal is every November, you set a goal to write 50,000 words over those 30 days.
Wow.
And thousands of people the world over come together to help one another do it. It's really cool. It's a really cool community. So I finished that draft doing NaNoWriMo, and then I offered it to my fellow Antioch MFA friends. We always read each other's work and give feedback. We all had manuscripts to trade. we met a few months later and they said to me, Tim, this is amazing. You have something here. You need to go the distance with this. That's kind of when I knew to keep going with it. I made a couple of alterations to it. I think at that point, I also wanted to incorporate different aspects of theater that I don't see explored, meaning not just theater kids who are actors, but there's a very strong directing element in the book. And there's a very strong world building element in the book through the Santini twins, who make this incredible set in their backyard, right? Like, I wanted a huge focus on set building and stage management and directing and sound and lights and all of the stuff that goes into a theater program and being a young theater kid. So that's when I added that stuff in to make it more encompassing. So it's a book for theater kids, but not just theater kids who perform, but theater kids who build sets, theater kids who want to stage manage, theater kids who want to direct. And then, I don't know, I started, this was around the time that my first book came out, Alice the Cat. When this came out, I was already shopping it around. So I guess all in all, a year and a half.
That's so fast. So fast. That's very impressive. My big problem is that I'm very busy, and finding the time to write has been really tricky. I recently looked at, like, when did I create this document that I've been writing in, and it's already been like 2 years.
Yep.
But I'm making good progress, and when I sit down and write, it's there, and I know what happens next. I have the whole thing in my head, but then I keep being surprised by new things coming up, and I'm having the best time writing it. It's very therapeutic for me, and I've been a sci-fi nerd my whole life. And again, write what you know. I know sci-fi, and I know my chronic illness. I know the pain that I lived through, and processing that out, translating it into this other way, and like having someone else experience it, it's very interesting. It's really it's been like a beautiful process so far. I really hope to finish it someday. I really hope to release it someday, even if it's just like, self-published ebook that I tell people on the podcast to check out. I really hope that happens. I have no idea if I'm going to make it. I have a good feeling that I will.
Yeah,
but I just need to do it. It just needs to happen, because for me, it's an interesting process, because I have created a lot of stuff over the years, music, videos, podcasts, and there's always been this element of, someone experiencing what I've made is the last step in the process that sort of closes the loop. You kind of need that to happen. This is one of the first things I've ever made where it's like, this one's for me, and getting to the last page is the goal. And then anything that happens after that would be bonus. But this is how I need to process what I've been through in my body. So it's been amazing.
You're gonna do it. I have
Thank you.
I'm very intuitive about this stuff, and I can just tell from you, because you are somebody who you're very expressive and intelligent and loquacious.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
And you're reaching out to people through your podcast. And you have a story to tell about your life having these disabilities and getting over this trauma. Those are the stories that make it to the finish line. They do. And this is why I love to teach, because everybody comes to my classes. I run private writing workshops, and I teach for UCLA Writers Program, and everybody just says, I can't get to the end of this. I don't know how I'm going to get to the end of this. I really want to get to the end of this. I have the story to tell. And I say, then that's what we're going to do. You'll get there. You'll get there. But it does require the commitment of whatever it takes for you, writing workshops or going away on writing retreats. But as difficult as it can be, it's so worth it in the end. It is so very worth it. I'm living proof, I wanted to write books and publish novels my entire life. I felt like I got not sidelined, but a little bit of a detour going into theater. Because at that time in my life, like, I really needed to figure out who I was, and I needed to heal, and I needed to have some arena where I felt powerful. And my journey as an actor has been absolutely extraordinary. I mean, the things that I've manifested, I remember being probably my all-time favorite movie is Aliens.
Oh, great choice.
I mean, I could do a one-man show of Aliens. I know
I would pay
that
money to
movie
see that.
like the back of my hand. And lo and behold, years later, where do I end up? But at Sigourney Weaver and her husband's theater company in New York City, and ended up being in a show with Sigourney Weaver. And I remember the moment where I was like, holy shit, the stuff that you can manifest. Like, I'm literally doing a play with Ripley, right? It happens. It happens. People just don't realize the power of manifestation. And I mean, it makes sense. Like, we're so distracted, especially in the modern world. We are so distracted from the news cycle and the internet and social media and so many things. But when you really just close your eyes, go into a meditative state, really trust your creativity, really trust your ambition, magical stuff is going to happen. It's also it's the message of this book. It's the same kind of thing. Someone who read it recently was like, what's so cool about it is that, it's like teenagers doing it because teenagers, they really get stuff done. Like, would you be able to write this book about a bunch of middle-aged adults? And I was like, no, probably not.
Well, speaking of manifestation, what's next for you?
So, well, I'm going to be promoting this book all summer, and I'm going to be going to the East Coast to do some events and to Chicago to do some events. And, we'll see what happens with it. I'm curious about how it will reach its magical tentacles into the world. I'd like it to have some reach, and I'd love for somebody to adapt it into a film or an amazing Netflix series. So we'll see what happens with this, but I do have some other books that I'm working on. I'm working on a book now that explores, to make a long story short, the way that artists can sometimes go too deeply into their work and get stuck there and not come out. It's probably
interesting.
I would say its closest ancestor would be something like Black Swan. Because of Natalie Portman's character in that movie. She's so desperate to be perfect that she literally becomes the Black Swan. It's this whole notion of what do we have to give to our art, right? And also the mythology around like the 27 Club, the whole mythology around, how we're supposed to suffer for our art. There's this incredible TED Talk by Elizabeth Gilbert, which you should check out, where she talks about the old relationship of an artist and the sort of spiritual muse that lived in the wall and how they would have this symbiotic relationship. And somewhere along the way, it became about the whole, like, I need to be an alcoholic and a drug addict and just be suffused with so much pain and misery in order to be an artist and in order for my art to matter. And then you were having all of these brilliant people just drop off the planet. And that's not the point at all. So it's exploring some of these tropes, but in a way that's based on something that happened to me as a young actor in New York City in the 90s.
Cool.
I'm about finished with the draft, and then we have to kind of see what it is, because it's not until you actually finish a draft of a book that the book tells you what it wants to be.
Yes, totally. I've been watching Brandon Sanderson's writing lectures on YouTube, and I've learned a lot. And I've actually written a whole book before, but it's bad, and no one else is allowed to read it. And he was talking about how you have to write a couple books before you can get one that's ready for publication. Yeah. And the idea that, I would get stuck on the first chapter. This was like my curse. And it happened with this new book that I'm writing. I'd rewrite the first chapter over and over and over and over, and I just couldn't move on. And he was saying that you can't rewrite your first chapter until you finish the last chapter, because the first chapter needs to sort of be a microcosm of the story as a whole. And until you finish the story, you can't do that. Right. And it just it's like, oh, duh, and these little tiny things that freed me to continue. It's like, let the first draft be bad. Come back and fix it later. You just got to get it down, get through it. And that's where I'm at now. And I've been trying to do this also for a very long time, but I keep getting stuck because you fall into these like mental holes where you tell yourself you're bad and that you can't do it, and just trying to stay out of that and just keep writing. It's a real process to learn how to do that at all.
There's no perfection here. It's all about process, and you need to honor your process. I mean, if books were so perfect, would we need to publish 1,000 of them a day?
Yeah.
If movies were so perfect, would we need to release how many dozens of them every single weekend? It's not about any of that. It literally isn't. It is about process. It's about artists coming together and making things. I have this acronym that I tell my students. It's FDIE, FDIE. First draft is everything. And when they go to that place, I'm like, FDIE, you cannot talk about this until you get to the end of this draft. You have to get there. Just get there. Just push through. That's why I love things like NaNoWriMo, because it forces you to get to the end. You have to do it. You have to let go of all those voices and just write and write and write and write. What's amazing about it is you'd be surprised how good it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
You think it's bad, and then you read it back and you're like, oh my God, it's actually really good.
Yeah. And the things that are bad are easy fixes. That's what I've been discovering. And I have a friend who is also trying to write something, and we've been meeting and talking about our stories together, which has been really helpful. It's just fun. I love it. I thrive on creativity, and whenever I'm bored, which is not often because we're so overstimulated these days, but I just go to this world that I'm creating and I just think about it, and I think about what's happening next, and I live there. And there's a part of me that just wants that to last forever, but I also really want to finish it so I can start revising it, Anyway, Tim, I have one more question for you. So if it were possible for Matthew, for your brother, to read your book, what would you want him to take from it?
That's a loaded question. I think I would want him to feel like, regardless of the chaos that surrounded his life and the unintentional inabilities of a lot of people who were around him to offer him a lot of help, that he could have leveled out, found a way to live with this, had a normal, happy life, and really feel like a normal person, but also celebrating that which was different about him. The thing about Matt is he was sort of an eternal little kid. I think because of the way his brain developed on its own and differently from everybody else's, there was always this kind of innocence about him, and always this wonder, and always this curiosity. And the way that a little kid really loves the things that they love, Matt was really, really like that. I would want to see him retain that in his essence, but also just be living in the world as an adult like you and me. I don't know what that mashup would look like. It hurts to have to think about it. I could write a million stories about this, and I can fictionalize it into infinity. But as human animals living in the modern world on planet Earth, we have to face things like death. We have to face illness and death, and we have to keep going despite all of that. This is a way for me to not let go of him, but let go of him. Look, here's a picture of him. There he is.
Awesome.
This was when he graduated from his special school. I think this happened when I was a sophomore at NYU. But I love that thing that he's holding. I mean, you can't, where did he get that?
Yeah, what it says Matthew. What is it?
It says Matthew. Yeah, it's like a giant glittery, like a scroll, like a diploma. Yeah. But it's like, you can't. I showed this to my friend my friend Jen, and she's like, "You can't get that on Amazon." I'm like, "I know, like somebody made it for him," and that's what I love about it. Here we are.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So, the other thing is that Matt, because sometimes he comes through, and the message he always imparts to me, I think, is very like, chill out. Chill out. You don't have to be so serious about stuff. Like, chill out. Like, do the stuff that makes you feel the most chill in the world. And I focus on that a lot. Like, whatever those things, like, I love listening to music. So I have a major collection of vinyl out there in my in the family room, right? So I love going to record stores and getting records and just listening to records. About a year ago, I discovered this incredible dance aerobics community called Pony Sweat. And Pony Sweat is a fiercely non-competitive dance aerobics practice with all of the coolest people in LA and the greatest playlists imaginable. It's all like punk, post-punk, gothic, new wave, 80s hits, 90s divas, grunge, electro, Euro. And I go 2 to 3 times a week to just dance and move my body. Like those little things that make you happy. That's where it counts.
Yeah.
Collecting books, as you can see. Like the things that you love in life, love them.
That's amazing. That's the perfect sentiment to wrap this episode up on. Tim, thank you so much. Here is the book, Tim Cummings, The Lightning People Play, which you can see here if you're watching the video version of the podcast on YouTube or Spotify. Tim, tell us where people can go to find your book, the audiobook, the physical copy, the ebook. Where can people go if they want to experience this story?
They can go to my website, www.timcummings.inc, INK, like an octopus or a writer, Inc. And on my website, I have a lot of information about. There's a page for the Lightning People Play where it has all these outlets on how you can get the book. You can support your local indie store by calling them and saying, "Do you have the Lightning People Play?" And if not, have them order it. The local library, that's the best way to get it in your community. But you can also get it from all the other outlets. It's got really good distribution. So I Googled it the other day and I was like, oh my God, it's everywhere. Which is great. But yeah, my website is a great source of information. And then I'm on Instagram. My tag is OctoSpark.
Awesome. Well, I will tag you on Instagram when this episode goes live. We are at Major Pain Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. I think that's it. And I will put a link to your website in the show notes of this episode. This has been such a treat for me.
Honestly, me too, Jesse.
To get to read your book and love it. I love fantasy and sci-fi. So this was right up my alley. And with my theater background, and I love how this is sort of subtle fantasy. It's like, is it or isn't it fantasy is sort of the question of the book. But it is also this beautiful representation of how a chronic illness can impact a family, which is so right up my alley for this podcast and my personal experience. So this book really spoke to me on several different levels. Like I said, I love the actual writing of it. It's a really pleasurable, fun read because it's so well written and it's got some really, really important themes, great representation, and a really beautiful story. So I really enjoyed it.
Please review it for me. I mean, please put a review on Goodreads and Amazon. Like, you have so much great stuff to say about it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Tim, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. I loved connecting with you today, and I'm thrilled to be able to share this with our audience. Thank you for coming on Major Pain.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Major Pain. I'm Jesse Mercury, the creator of this podcast, with support from Trisha Schmidt and Casey McKenzie. Artwork by Egg Salad Salad. Our theme music is the song Time Machine from my synthpop album Sci-Fi, now streaming everywhere. Join our community on social media, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, all at Major Pain Podcast. If you have questions or comments you'd like to share with myself, our guests, or our listeners, send an email to majorpainpodcast@gmail.com. You can also head to our website to learn more about this show, support its creation, or leave a comment on any episode at majorpainpodcast.com.